Hello everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of November the 7th, 2022. We have a really intense and quite life-changing sky, if I'm actually allowed to say that, because we have an extremely powerful total lunar eclipse just on Tuesday, and this eclipse is really significant because this is going to be one of the highlights, one of the wrap-ups, one of the most concentrated and most clear reflections of what this North Node's transit, this very special year, because don't get me wrong, the North Node kind of transits Taurus every 18 years, but this year, because of other celestial conversations and basically the karmic reverberation of 2020, it is a very significant energy because it gives us a lot of clarity in maybe not in the technical details, maybe not necessarily in our extremely modern human life way, but it does give us a deep soul level clarity, truth, perhaps epiphanies, perhaps, ironically speaking, something new birthing spontaneously out of you. This can be a life-changing factor. And usually something new is not the theme of a full moon, yet a total lunar eclipse. Especially that the sun is conjunct the south node in Scorpio, so that is definitely nothing new in that sense. And a full moon slash lunar eclipse is a big closure, a big wrap up. Yet still, the past Scorpio solar eclipse on the 25th of October, so just now, is the new element which can actually represent, yes, a culmination of, something completing itself, but that completion can very quickly quantum leap us to the future. And in the future, of course, a new beginning is bound to take place. So the element of new might come from the propulsion, might come from this strong, very energetic Uranian push. Of course, of where this eclipse falls in your own personal chart, which area of life, but this is perfectly valid collectively speaking. So we are just before a massive quantum leap. Of course, that quantum leap does have a window of, according to my personal anticipations, a month, or in the worst case scenario, spring next year, to be fulfilled, so to speak, for us to already be awoken in a new shift, let's say, a new tide carrying us forward. But in the worst case scenario, in spring next year, as I said, we're already living this consciously. So until spring next year, this will one way or another come together in our lives personally, but more importantly collectively, because this will shape the landscape politically, financially, economically, and in perhaps technologically and anything that has to do with internet sharing of information. Mercury holding important aspects at the time of this eclipse. And Mercury can also be considered that it's somehow part of it, because it is conjunct the sun when the eclipse takes place. So information, truth, investigation, perhaps the communication of what has been discovered will be part of this eclipse, this energy, and this larger period. And also, another element to this, it highlights what the Saturn and Uranus long-term this square has been with us in 2021 for a long time. And in 2021 was one part, one side of it. In 2020, another side of it. But this eclipse, I do believe, wraps it up because this square will basically not form for a long time. So this is the final breathing, living moments of this square. And an eclipse, Uranus, as I said, being part of the eclipse. So it will be really a T-square. And this Saturn and Uranus square's main theme is also going to be very, very, very obvious to us. Because it will, I want to say, shed light onto it, but under an eclipse, that's a really not appropriate term to use. Because an eclipse is a reset, a moment of darkness. Yet still after the darkness does come the light, the clarity. So yes, it will also reveal to us what was the main theme of the Saturn-Uranus square in our lives, in our community, in our family. So it's not just us, Aquarius, it's also everyone else who shared this with us. And we also, it's a reality check because we will see how well we did. What have we done with the energy, with the impulse, with the challenges? A lot of challenges, a lot of unexpected, and basically everything that these squares produced is a very, very atypical behavior and attitude for us personally. So we were not the same under this period. We acted differently. We broke our own barriers. We broke our own concrete walls that perhaps were unshakable for tens of years. And a lot has, been demolished. A lot of bad especially. Because it might have felt like moments of crisis when it happened. As I said, summer 2021, actually not just summer, that square has been basically active more or less all through 2021 and then 2022, of course. So yes, that felt like a crisis when it happened, but under introspection, under all of these Mercury retrograde periods that we had this year, now it does feel like a blessing. It does feel like a necessary crisis that has ultimately shaped the landscape of our lives from the inside, not as much as the outside. Even for some people, it did manifest very, very strongly on the outside, but what it, the essence, the core is still on the inside because our worldview has changed radically, and that's why everything is different. So, long story short, this is a week when we are going to be feeling this, thinking this, processing this, even from the most practical Mars retrograde in Gemini. So the Gemini elements, the small nitty-gritty, to the big philosophical, the big spiritual and basically existential themes. So everything is going to be part of this picture. So it's quite karmic, it's quite influential, and the keyword, very, very surprising and unexpected, because Uranus is, as I said, hand in hand with this eclipse. Of course, there are other energies to complete this, especially, for example, Jupiter anaretic in Pisces retrograde. So Jupiter just recently retrograded back into Pisces, and it's in anaretic position. So the shadow aspect of this is highlighted, but it's very favorable that the shadow is part of all of this, because it's an eclipse, it terminates. So whatever comes to the surface, whatever just screams to be released, to be acknowledged, to be looked at, well, this week might not be a choice, because it will come. And, also, this energy is from within. We are that much more likely to have a very powerful moment of honesty with ourselves. especially with the self. This is where no more excuses, no more interpretation. Of course, Jupiter in the sign of Pisces and erratic, no more false hope, but that means true hope. Much more of true hope. So it's really not bad. It's not all that bad, but it will feel very, very, very intense, especially the moon, emotionally intense. But it also eclipses a deeply, deeply, deeply rooted emotion, or a deep, what it can be, emotion, thought, custom, pattern. It can be anything, personally, because depending on where it falls in your chart, but what is in common that it's deeply, deeply rooted. In some cases, perhaps it's so deep that it's even inherited, picked up from parents, from family, from relevant people in our lives. But when there needs to be a termination, well, this eclipse takes care of it. That which was unbreakable, that which was immovable, has its day now. And before I don't forget, I also would like to mention that yes, this Uranian activity can have very physical um, elements to it. Earthquakes, seismic activity, volcanic activity, disruption, accidents, everything that basically shocks us with awareness. And also, because Jupiter is an erratic in Pisces, the power of water. So remember the floods in Australia and in so very many parts of this world in the spring or very, very early summer that can make a return in our lives. Physically, it might be a bit funny, but an erratic Jupiter in Pisces can be like leakages, washing machine leaking, pipes leaking, um, inner pipes leaking. So as funny as that is, that can also manifest in some people's lives. And funny enough, I'm mentioning this, but it almost happened to me as well the other day. So, and I'm not the person who ever was in danger of this. I would even find it laughable. So surprises may come, and if it's a humorous moment like that in life, well, then you're blessed. Because that means your heart is so light-hearted. Your heart is you're so light that the universe doesn't need to throw heaviness at you. It throws a moment of different awareness, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, if it manifests like that in your life, that means that the universe is in extremely good relations with you. And you have done a lot of serious inner work, and it can't affect you in any other way. But for most of us, it's gonna be very, very deeply stirring emotionally. Tears, of course, are part of this picture. Whoever is immune to that, well, maybe inside there will be tears in that way. So, a very powerful emotional release, hand in hand with the truth, hand in hand with the realization, hand in hand with a decision, a choice. And with this Jupiter in Pisces, it's heavily karmic. And it's dissolving that which must not stay with us in the future anymore. Whatever that is trauma, this energy is the one that can heal traumas. Bad traumas, the really, really bad type, but in shocking, intense ways. So, when a therapist couldn't help us, the universe can, but in wild ways. Yet, what matters is that the healing can take place instantly, spontaneously, miraculously. And really, really old bad stuff, emotional, spiritual, like spiritual. Uh, Maybe I shouldn't be speaking about this, but if there is an energy which can break like curses, like the really, really heavy occult stuff, the bad spiritual stuff, our own creations or someone's creation, of course. Scorpio, ego, jealousy, envy, greed, obsession, illness, but this eclipses it. It can break. Allow it to die. If the divine offers you this opportunity, allow it to manifest any way it needs, because it breaks something so bad. And so it's like a surgery, really. Scorpio. The knife goes in, and yes, a living part is cut out, and it's uncomfortable. And in this day and age, general anesthetic in very many people's lives, this eclipse will play out as general anesthetic. Maybe it's a truly not life-changing, small cut or whatever it might be in your life. And whatever the gut does, because it might be cosmetic. Taurus, definitely part. And it's not life-altering in a physical way, because it's something so minor. But the general anesthetic, that 10 minutes, let's say, 5 minutes of out, that does stuff energetically. That does stuff in the unconscious. So it might be the most relevant part of your healing process. Because you might think, well, I'm going to the doctor to cut out like something very optional. Kidney stone or it's a small surgery. But that moment of anesthetic, even if it's not like general, even if it's just drugging you, making you sleep in a certain way for 5-10 minutes, but that chain starts karmic event, because your conscious is out for a little bit. That means everything that's beyond immediately goes into action. And the spiritual element needs only 1 millisecond. And sometimes classic sleep does not do it. Because some people in this day and age, even many people, have very powerful, strong, and aggressive unconscious, what we call the unconscious, let's say. And that needs this eclipse, the general anesthetic, the drug moment, or a powerful emotional shock for the eclipse to take place and karma to enact itself. Because Taurus, some of us are so stubborn spiritually that we can stop karma. And we don't know. We might live all of our lives in the illusion that karma cannot be stopped, energies cannot be... And surprise, surprise, we might be titans on the other side, and we might not know it. Like Atlas could block out everything. So we don't know how we are on the other side, the ethereal self, because it's not here, it's over there. That is projecting us here. We could be big. We can be a vulnerable person, for example, who somehow accepted to play the not so strong role in this incarnation, will live in the illusion that they're just like that on the other side, and they might be like and I don't even know what terminology to use here, like they might be like a massive beefcake, like someone with infant, like Hercules, and they would not be aware of this in this incarnation. But then there comes general anesthetic, and then it infuses, and the person will see very soon after the surgery, or however the emotional shock or whatever this comes through as, that their life is healing, changing, falling into place. They are just feeling better each day for no reason. Yeah, this is needed. So this is good news, at least in my eyes, because out of personal experience as an astrologer and a mystic, I saw eclipses like this heal in a sudden, shockingly, but it heals. You wake up the other day and your problem no longer weighs you down, and then the next day, then you actually have this attitude, okay, I need to be someone. So let's just be someone. Because I have this free space in my heart, in my psyche, I can sleep. Let's be someone. Okay, it's done. I can manage. And you might think that this is years, months of therapy, and when an eclipse like this comes and you're in the right setup, no, it can be so quick. So this is what we have to focus on. And whatever truth comes in our lives, let me give you an example. Your partner is not very loyal physically to you, but surprise, surprise, they're loyal on a soul level in a way that it was unimaginable to you until now, and you find forgiveness. This is something that is bound to it's a surprise, and it goes against all logic, but it's healing. It gives you your life back. It gives your partner's life back. But this is just an example. It can happen in so very many different ways, and the surprise can come from within. And we will just wake up and I never knew I had this feeling, this emotion, this love, this passion in me this strongly. I never realized that I love this person, that whatever place, anything Torian this much. Or my love is dead. I loved something all my life and it was the fuel that kept me going, and today it's gone. And you know what? It's okay, because I feel the strength to love something else. So yes, this energy also transforms professionals, the obsessive kind of professionals, that the profession, the calling, the mission, including spiritual, religious, spiritual, what was everything to you all your life. And you wake up after this eclipse and you just want to have a life. This is how it starts happening. You wake up with that feel, am I truly desiring to have a kind of life? And you go to sleep with this feeling, and the next morning messages come, there's knocks on your door, and it's almost like that faint suspicion of yours comes into reality. So this energy also balances us in a forced way, where sometimes it's really not up to us, it just happens. Sometimes even balance and equilibrium, it just happens. And this is the kind of energy that changes the picture, changes the setup. So the person will find themselves no longer living obsessively for the mission, even if you have like a massive stellium in the 10th house, it can even happen to you. You just wake up one day that you're not really living the mission, and you want to have someone close to you, and your life changes, and it becomes more balanced, and you become grateful for it. So sometimes burnouts are blessings, so to speak. Yeah, what I actually said, projected here, that for very strong professional people, this can come as a burnout, a powerful, spontaneous, sudden burnout, but which turns into a blessing quickly, in a day or two, let's say, because the new also knocks at the door. So, let's speak about different nuances of this energy, because there is Mercury involved. Mercury is the mental side of this energy, conjunct the sun. Mercury, always when it meets the sun, is the prophecy aspect, the clarity aspect. The mind becomes the most important part of our consciousness, the sun, the rational self, the rational soul. Because the rational is our tentacles which help us navigate in the physical and even the projection of the physical world, like the internet, social society, interhuman relationships. That's not necessarily physical, but it is a projection of the physical. So, a very strong, as I said, clarity that Mercury will be able to process, especially that it opposes its higher octave Uranus, the higher mind. Values, what values mean to us, what our time means to us, sacrifice, five senses, pleasure, happiness. Well, the common theme here for everyone, and I do believe not just human being, every living being, sentient being on the planet, whatever, that happiness is not optional. Happiness is a must. And this conception of auto-flagellation and feeling guilty for being able to be happy with nothing, because this is unconditioned happiness. Okay, the world is burning around you and meteors are falling from the sky, and you know what? You're not bothered. You're actually happy because you have that inner kind of serenity. Why would you feel guilty for being happy and not sharing sometimes other people's pain and fears, irrational fears? There is empathy and compassion, sharing people's burden, the cross. And there is, when we share the irrational fear, the paranoia, the obsession out of sheer empathy, that is where we need to stop. Because we should not share that. No, that's not helping. So this eclipse, yes, Mercury opposing Uranus will give us all the tools to identify what healthy compassion is. And if we are able to be just happy, because we are happy in the soul and spirit, we will never ever need to feel guilty for that, because that is the greatest blessing. And this eclipse highlights the North Node in Taurus. Out with the old. And this, including spiritually, and this will strike a nerve strongly. Out with the old. That means out with what we revere, out with what we idolize, out with the past, ancient civilizations, Atlantis, Lemuria, everything that we might idolize. Because the North Node with Uranus in Taurus, the conjunction, because it's not a strong conjunction, but it still is, and it's part of the eclipse. Well, what this says to us is that if what we worship so much would have been so good as we think, we would be happier beings right now. So we must see the other side where it failed. But what doesn't fail is love. Just love. Love and the simple things in life, the simplicity of existence. We don't need the scorpionic element, the complexity to it. One might say that, for example, something that has been like an argument, philosophical war in the occult world. One might argue that one needs magical formulas, sigils, gold, the alchemy to be met precisely as the ancients have passed it down to us in order for true magic to work. Yes, absolutely, that would have been the case from 2000 until 2020, the end of 2020, because the Taurus energy, the great conjunction in Taurus, that cycle, yes, absolutely. After that, unfortunately, all of that is burdensome, very, very burdensome, because that needs to be compost, fuel, oil to burn. As in, you know what I mean? That is like it or not, and please, I do not mean this in the offensive way in the slightest, but the South Node in esoteric literature is energetic excrement. Mercury, the information of it. The Sun, we become aware of it. So the excrement is necessary because it feeds, it gives, it births new, it's food. And what is the new? The simplicity of all of it. Basically, the power of love, the power of desire, moon, eclipse. This is where we see the truth of it all. What were those beings, those things that passed down all the scorpionic information, wisdom, everything that we revere so much to our ancestors? You know what it was? Emotion. Whatever those beings were, they were from the dimension of emotion, feeling. A feeling elevated to the level of divine insanity will birth something for all of us. The mind will have no choice. It will be subjugated to give an interpretation to it, a name, a function, an interpretation to it. So basically, we will be returned to the dimension of emotion where all of us come from, really. So emotion is infinitely simple. If we want to have power and understanding over it, then it becomes complex to absurdity. And Venus, free by nature, Uranus, free. Venus was born from Uranus. Freedom, love is free. Emotion is free, uncontrollable, unfathomable, forever insane. Insane by its very existence. It's just a dream. But the dream is all. Everything material is nothing without the dream, without the emotion, without the feeling. Even beings of infinite ration and thought are subject really to emotion. Because would they not be, we would never ever meet and encounter each other, not even in philosophy. So basically, emotion is all. Can we not, all of us, elevate an emotion to the level of divine insanity, like the ancients have done? Is that not truly the alchemy without the formula? The formula makes sure that we have control over it. Yet, at the time of a lunar eclipse, control is just a faint memory. So whatever needs to birth itself, finally, perhaps after thousands of years, it has its moment to birth itself. It waited long enough. So we'll see what will happen, but let's not forget that emotion is basically divine. And just that. This is where all the wisdom that was bestowed upon us, how to manifest with frequency and stuff like that, that is eclipsed. But elevated emotion, and basically emotion means that one needs to distill even pain to its very core. Then that becomes something divine, something godly, something that births, something that bends reality, something that won't care what Newton said, something that won't care that Hawking finally saw the light, the Higgs boson. It won't care that that has to be in a certain way to make sense to us. Divine insanity, it won't care. And that is the essence of miracles. But all of what is scorpionic, well, it's gonna be eclipsed. So it won't have any power over it. Jupiter in the sign of Pisces. That means that neither can the principle of Christ and infinite compassion aggressive compassion, perhaps, it cannot be stopped. So, yes, it will be a very interesting eclipse where Saturn will also tell us what it is that we need to do practically to step into the future finally, because the time is here and this is where it's time to do it. It's not going to be very easy because Mars squaring Neptune, Mars retrograde in the sign of Gemini. We need to take it slowly and we need to be sure that we understand the self. That's the basis of survival right now. To go in the rhythm of the self, not rhythm dictated by circumstance, other people, spiritual dogma. No, no, no. The rhythm of the self. If the self wants to go fast, you need to go fast. If the self wants to take the break, you take a break. As my favorite astrologer Nadia Shah said, halt. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, you need to stop there and meet your Taurian needs and then resume. So go with the rhythm of the self, dance to the tune in your own soul. Moon and Taurus's music. Dance to your own drum beat. Dance to your own inner rhythm and harmony, because this is where your soul can sing. That's your frequency. This is how you turn the crisis energy of the eclipse into something quite surprisingly favorable. Now, of course, collectively speaking, as I said, it's not only the physical accidents and stuff that's gonna happen. And when I say accidents, we can expect in all of our lives small accidents, but for the humor part of it, of course, there are going to be people for whom accidents will be the karmic, and that's not as humorous. But, when our phone slips, when something falls into the toilet, when the food spills, or, any kind of accident, before swearing and becoming angry and irritable, let's become aware that that's a blessing. It's a humor, and let's take it as such. Because if it would spill on your hand and the knife would not really fall that far apart from your foot, but exactly into your foot, that's when it's not so funny anymore. So, instead of swearing, let's stop and become Uranian. And that means also being grateful for the miss, if you know what I mean. Because there will be people for whom it will not miss. And as I said, compassion. Compassion. We need to display a lot of compassion, because there will be people out there who will, that night, that week, of course a small Uranian time frame, will be very, very vulnerable. Either they will have an accident, for example, and will need, I don't know, care, a place to stay, good words, hugs, the soup, the warm soup that you give them. Other people, for you to be on the phone with them 24/7 because they will be that fragile, that vulnerable. But we need to be there for them. Or if we are going to be the people in need, then yeah, accept help, because what can we otherwise do? On the other hand, as I said, it's gonna be collectively a big, big tsunami, water element tsunami. Politically, decisions are gonna be made, people are not gonna like them, so they will throw it back, throw the legislation back, throw the solutions back, throw everything back, because people are not gonna be happy. Now, that's one thing, because it's in their rights, but this is where it makes things worse. Because it creates blockages and strikes, protests in and even Taurian things. So food, transport of food, Mars retrograde in Gemini, logistics, export, import, commerce, negotiations, also Gemini energy. It's not going to be easy, and it's the beginning of it. But it cannot be stopped. People not being happy cannot be stopped. Let me show you why. We have Eris squaring Ceres conjunct Pallas Athena in the sign of Cancer. Eris is like a female Uranus. She throws the golden apple, the disruption. Let's call it like the disruption. Pallas Athena Ceres conjunction. They almost had it figured out. Because, collectively speaking, in practical ways, Black Moon Lilith in Cancer, I'm forcing myself to figure it out and keep everything under control. Forcing to the maximum limits, but I'm doing it. Pallas Athena, the tactics are there, the ambition is there, the force is there. Now this is on both sides, politicians, people, administrators, governors. Why? Because Cancer, they kind of have to keep the people together, the leaders of the people. Okay, that's Capricorn, but it's also Cancer, because Capricorn will act through the immediate leaders, the people in community. So they have stuff figured out until the eclipse, because Eris throws in the disruption. So you can imagine, this is conflictual, this is crisis, this is Pallas Athena when her tactics fail, and when all her planning fails, then she knows how to act with great force. Black Moon Lilith, well, she's expert at force. Eris, she's even better than Pallas Athena and Black Moon Lilith put together by force. She's the freedom fighter. She's the revolutionary. She's my right. She is, well, I don't, even if I end up in prison, she's that kind of energy. And when the two clash, the control freak that has everything figured out, but why doesn't Eris like the solution? Because it makes sense. But Eris said, I'm not in the mood. You failed me too much. So Eris, let's say, is the people, and Pallas Athena is the, how should I say, local, the immediate representative. And of course, this will project itself onto Capricorn, where the big leader is. And speaking about projection, very soon, both Pallas Athena and Black Moon Lilith will start opposing Pluto. So exactly what I said, it will get to the bigger leader. What will get to it? The big dissatisfaction. But this dissatisfaction is irrational. So you see how the conflict is born. So this means protests, strikes, stopping, food, nurture, the service, maternity, medical care, kindergarten, nursery. Why? Because Cancer, Black Moon Lilith, Pallas Athena. That's their job. Nurseries to have children and basic needs and the motherly, the caring energy. In other expressions of that's even worse. Ethnicity, neighbors. For example, and I'm so sorry to use this really horrible example, but in my culture in Romania, there's the Hungarian and Romanian ethnicity. That kind of old frustrations and illogical, irrational lack of sympathy mutually that kickstarts, that flares up. But, in my culture, it's not a big deal, because it's just blah, blah, blah. But in other cultures, other countries where there are such things, it can get bad. For example, in the Arabian world, in like Serbia and stuff, that region. And of course, if there are countries with regions in them, like states within states, like the United States, one state against the other. Bad neighbors, very bad neighbors, aggressive neighbors. It falls apart from the inside. So yeah, it's deeply conflictual energy, and the fact that Pluto is grinding heavily makes it politically chaotic. So politicians find themselves in great war with each other, and then they're attacked by everyone, all the citizens. So, and of course, don't understand this physically. The energies of it, psychologically, if nothing else. But you can see where this will start yet another series of big turbulence. Okay, that's one side of the story. That because we're used to that, that's nothing new. Let's be honest with each other. Just another autumn, end of beginning, whatever end, I think. But there's the financial crisis, and that is the scary part. Oh, before I move on, there's a T-square, really. Eris squares Pluto, then Eris squares Ds, then there is another asteroid, Haumea. There, the squares are not very easy right now, so that's a grand cross, basically. So, yeah. Moving on, there is the financial part, that what happened to the money? What happened to the management of money? Venus, but then Mercury conjunct Sun, the investigation, the numbers, it has to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, then it's criminal activity or fraud or deception or manipulation or, you know, and this is where the questions are raised. Well, I don't want to name it, but the political world is going to have a lot of lack of sympathy, let's say, in the coming months. Very big lack of sympathy from everyone. So, yeah. But another thing, personally, this Pallas Athena and Black Moon Lilith square with Eris, toxicity in the family. So, yeah. And if there's no, and for people who are alone and don't really have a lot of family, it's painful. It's gonna be painful. Something will trigger you. This is where salt on the wounds. I don't know. A happy couple, for example, who are so in love that it's just them and the universe, move next door to you, and every day you see that, and it's beautiful, and you appreciate it, and you're full of love, and oh yes, how beautiful. But after a while, it will be salt on your wounds, because it will make your own loneliness feel like misery. So, triggers. Maybe some people need that trigger. Let it end already. While other people need that trigger to move away. And maybe where they move next is where things change. Anyway, because there is a trine with Neptune. So Black Moon Lilith and this Pallas Athena trines Neptune. That's good and bad, even though it's a trine, because Neptune is the spirit. And if the not so favorable side of the spirit is blessed, well, then you can imagine that it will. But the favorable side of this, there is ancestral healing here. There is benevolence. There is everything that happens will have a big reason for divine timing, basically. So even if there is toxicity, it's there on the surface to get resolved. Now, let's move on. This is the eclipse, the 8th. So as you can see, Mercury is conjunct the Sun, Uranus conjunct the Moon and the North Node. So it's very complex energy. But as I said, this surprise will matter a lot, especially collectively. And also, this is where Venus starting to trine Neptune, her higher octave. So, as I said, there is heaviness here, but at the same time, there is blessing, there is healing, there is the sigh of relief. There is the sense of finally it's over. Finally I'm free. Finally there is something that's soothing. There is something that is ultimately feels like, a healing ointment on a wound, like a soothing cream on an irritation. There is an energy that helps, that heals. So it's not all that bad. And later on, the Sun and Mercury will also hold a trine with Neptune. So first the heart, the emotional world, the value of it, Venus. But then comes the understanding of the ration, Mercury, and of course the integrity of the consciousness. So, and of course not this week, later on, Venus, Sun, and Mercury will also be holding the trine with Jupiter, an anaretic trine. That's like, it's time. Finally, it's here. Or finally, something happens. And it's trine, so it has to be something healing, soothing, and dissolving of the bad, dissolving of the chains, of the toxin, of whatever has been like a burden, like an obstacle in your life. And collectively as well, a forgiveness, a moment of peace, a moment of favorable compromise. Something can happen truly. And actually, this is not one aspect, but a lot of aspects. This is the day. Look at the aspects under this energy. All of these squares, all of these conjunction and oppositions, that extreme intensity. Like, yeah. But then when we move on, the trines, the sextiles, and there will be quincunxes later on, or there, yeah, later on. Yeah, look at all, this is where, when collectively speaking, it's like does not compute, system error. This day, for example, the 11th, might be a day where system error, it does not compute. So let's understand things totally differently. It's actually a blessing that it does not compute, but it's gonna be heavy. It's almost like intensely sad and happy at the same time. Isn't that just like mind-blowing? But as I said, deeply, deeply purging, deeply emotional, and finally, the guidance of it, love. The simplicity of all. Everything is simple in life. It is that everything's complicated. That's the illusion of it. That needs to be learned finally, South Node, and released. That it's only complex when you want it to be complex. When I'm not saying that some situations don't need complexity, because that's the path and key to evolution, but that's also the road to certain hell. So we need to balance out complexity with simplicity. There are some things in life which are meant to be complex, and it's wonderful, but let's allow and make sure, not just allow, that the things in life that need to be very, very simple to be simple. Let me just give you a simple example. Every human being will, without exception perhaps, be nurtured by another human being's affection. Because that is the divine design of us. So yes, that is a recipe that cannot go wrong. And we need to live in the truth of this. Now, of course, maybe there is a person who is a big exception to this. But then we will go in the inside and figure out that on a soul level, well, not everyone needs to be here in the design of things. Some souls are just here, but they should not really be here, so of course they're different. But if you're a human being, so there are certain big truths, simple, very, very, very simple, that make life so very livable. Give them to yourself. You might have 10 billion gadgets of all kinds. If you're not able to make a plant grow out of a seed, that's a deficit. Certain human beings need certain things because without them, they get, how should I separate it from the human element? So care and nurture, what mystics and what philosophers, what religions speak of as love. We are not dependent on that. We are that. We are part of that. So when we starve ourselves from that, we condemn ourselves to a very grotesque fall and mutation. Scorpio. And very, very rarely does the divine give us an opportunity once in thousands of years to undo the mutation, to return to innocence, to do it again, to do it over again, but this time the way we always wanted to. This eclipse is it. But it's conditioned, and if it has one condition to it, that's true love. Love to the highest elevation possible. Why? Because Uranus is not love. Uranus has no feelings. Uranus is infinitely cold. Not just physically in the solar system, the coldest planet and body, but also in astrology. But if we bring love to the table, then we have a perfect balance, because love meets the Uranian energy and it becomes 10 times stronger, and it creates what we need in our lives, both individually and collectively. But love is the key. Taurus is love. Everything is love, really. Without love, everything is Uranian. Everything is just cold, hard, meaningless, insignificant. There is the saying that, this and that, name whatever you want, doesn't need human beings to exist. This eclipse tells us that the opposite of that is true. Maybe some things exist in physical reality for our love, just for our love. Let me give you a ridiculous example. At least in Christian mythology, there are so very many plants who became miraculous and healing due to meeting with an embodiment of the divine. So we're not really talking about saints here. We're talking about the big, big, big figures. You can imagine how an elevated emotion changed the divine blueprint of a being, a plant. It's still a being. It has a spirit. It evolved in a millisecond. It became miraculous. You can understand this scientifically, and it's understandable, it makes sense. But you can also understand it through love. And through understanding it through love is so simple. So simple. Because every sentient living being... Okay, let's cut out the sentient word here, because this is controversial. Every being can communicate with other beings. Simple as that. If it lives, chances are you can communicate with it, and it will answer back. You just need to find the language. And that one of the language is love. Plants feel love, animals feel love, we feel love. And I would argue that as an experienced esoterist would say, even objects feel love. And there are people who are blessed, like my mom was. She could transform an object in a way that it's unexplainable, and so very many people have that touch, that talent. And in modern society, it's like myth, like belonging to the fairy tale books, and it's not. It's something practical. Like in Hindu tradition, I think there is celebration of the spirit of objects that help us. What are we speaking about? Of course, everything has a tiny fraction of consciousness to it. So yeah, love is everything, and as long as we make this the biggest theme in our lives this eclipse, we're absolutely okay. So thank you so much for listening. I do that this helped. If you'd like to support me and my work, you can donate in the PayPal link in the description below. And again, all I can say is let's truly embody this North Node in Taurus and be love in our lives and in the lives of everyone that we can. Until next time, bye for now.